What's up, you creepy fucks, and welcome to the Let's Talk Horror channel podcast. Nearly forgot what it was then. And welcome to the Creep Zone, where we have very honest, very unfiltered, unrated conversations about something from the world of horror. On this episode, we are talking about a new movie in regards to every single movie that I talk about. I tend to talk about films from the 70s, from the 80s. That's it. We're talking about Talk to Me. Talk to Me from 2022. It's a new film directed by some people. I will completely mispronounce their names. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I'm really excited about talking about this movie, Talk to Me, because I think there is quite a lot to discuss. And I think at the end of this, or near the end of this, I am going to go into a little bit probably as to why you don't see me cover a lot of the newer movies, and I promise I might try and change that a little bit more, but there is a reason, so I'll probably talk about that a little bit later. But like I said, we're talking about Talk to Me today, but with me, someone I'm so excited to have on the show, because it feels like the first time, but it's definitely not the first time, because with me I have Anastasia. Anastasia is the host, the creator of at least 8 billion podcasts. She's the host of Horror versus Reality. What in the wide world of cinema? Was that right?
Because that's
Did
correct.
I get it right? Honestly, I've been
practicing
right. All day. I've been thinking to myself, going over that name, and then Attack of the Killer Objects.
That's the one.
So, Anastasia, how the bloody hell are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for having me on. I rearranged my bedroom to do this. I don't record myself ever, other than my voice. I'm not a camera lady.
That's it, just the voice behind it all. But now today,
but I set this up. Yeah, I set this up for you.
Thank you. I feel very honoured, and I really do appreciate it. But it's weird because it feels like the first time that you're being on the show, but it's not, because obviously anybody that knows Let's Talk Horror Channel podcast knows that Anastasia is a true friend of the show. We have spoken about loads of films. We've spoken about The Thing. We've spoken about They Live. We got absolutely
Hellraiser.
Exactly. We got absolutely smashed drunk. Well, I did. I know that I fucking did, because I don't remember the rest of the episode. If anybody wants to hear me and Anastasia, especially me, get absolutely off my face, in the first and only episode where I've ever got drunk on one, go and listen to that episode, because by the end of it, I don't really know what's going on. And for 2 days, my brain didn't like it. But this is what happens when you talk about films that are super psychosexual.
This is true.
I'm not doing the shot because I've said it.
Not today. Not today.
That's it. On video, that'd go fucking bad. But yeah, so we've spoken about many movies before, and that's just on my show. I have been a guest on Anastasia's brilliant shows before. We've spoken about lots of different varied movies on different shows that she does. Like I mentioned, Anastasia is going to promote everything that she does at the end of the episode. You all know who she is anyway, and if you don't, you're bloody idiots. You bloody should do. But we're going to have some fun. We're going to be talking about Talk to Me, released, like I mentioned, in 2022. So like I said, a super modern movie. For some, in fact, it was their favourite movie of 2022. Honestly, I still can't think of mine. Mine was between, I think it was Evil Dead Rise, Talk to Me, and the absolutely amazing When Evil Lurks.
When Evil Lurks is my favorite, for sure.
I think When Evil Lurks, not to put any shade on this movie because we're going to talk about it, but I think When Evil Lurks may have done it. Normally I do the end of the year awards, the Let's Talk Horror awards at the end of the year, but I completely forgot to do it, so that didn't happen. So I was going to do a video of my top 3 and try and figure it out sort of real time is what my favourite was. But this was in there because it was a truly fantastic movie. It was a treat to sort of see at the cinema. But yeah, it came out in a pretty strong year, a reasonably strong year for horror that was mostly taken by possession movies.
I guess this is kind of a possession movie too, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you've got a possession movie. When Evil Lurks is obviously a demonic sort of possession movie. As we know, Evil Dead Rise is going to be about it. But luckily, it's not one of those shit ones that's got Russell Crowe in it fighting demons. on tuggers fighting in the world.
Why is he in? Okay, let's talk about this for just like 2 seconds. So
Yeah,
first, Russell Crowe's in a movie where he actually plays an exorcist, the Pope's exorcism.
yeah,
And
that's right.
then this year, he was in Exorcist, where he's playing an actor playing an exorcist.
He's just all about it. He just, I mean, Russell Crowe's a paycheck man now, isn't he? So he doesn't give a fucking shit what he's
Yeah,
in.
I guess so, yeah.
Every now and again, he sort of pulls it out of the bag and does something decent, like that. Unhinged. If you haven't seen that, that was pretty good. He's pretty fucking absolutely ballistic in that. But yeah, a lot of films around 2022 and still so on. They are sort of possession films, but we got 3 really good ones in 2022, and this is one of them. As I mentioned, I'm going to get this wrong, but it is directed by 2 brothers, Danny and Michael Philippou, which is, like I said, probably wrong. I apologise to them. They're never going to see this, but if they do, I apologise that I probably got your name wrong. And I am going to speak a little bit about them later on as well, because I think where we talk about it all on these podcasts on Let's Talk Horror, it's not just about the movie, it's about how important the aspects of what creating these movies, that's important to us as well. And that's what I really want to talk about. I like shedding light on it. So I think the journey from where they came from to this and directing their first feature film that was obviously an incredible success, critically and commercially, I think that's quite interesting to talk about as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so this film is starring, I'm going to go through these quickly and get all their names wrong. Sophie Wilde, Alexandra Jensen, Joe Bird, Otis Dahani, that's way wrong, I apologise. Miranda Otto, that's the only one I think out of this cast that I do know.
Zoe too.
Yeah, Zoe Tarakis, wrong. It's just a joke, really. Chris Alosio, Marcus Johnson, Alexandra Stephenson. That's all I'm going to do before anybody else tries suing me for the word that I can't think of, but because I've got it all fucking wrong.
Libel?
Yeah, that's it. IMDb have got it at 7.1, which is good for IMDb, and 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, I mean, obviously it's only 2022, but still it's up there, highly regarded critically on everything as well. I think, so it should be, which is what we're going to talk about as well. Google synopsis wise, when a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits with an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill and high stakes on a high stakes party game until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying supernatural forces. Something like that. Well done, Google.
Yeah, Google. It does whatever.
Exactly. We've gone through a few of the synopses, and that's not the worst one we've had.
Oh no, there's been way worse.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always ask this, and I will ask you this as well. But normally this is more relevant for older movies like 70s, 80s, and 90s, all that sort of stuff. But when did you first see this movie? Was this a movie that you saw at the cinema? Did you watch this on streaming for the first time?
I wanted to catch it at the movies, but I didn't actually see it until probably the day that it dropped on streaming. So, video on demand, like the day that you could buy it, but it wasn't like on wherever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, I was quite lucky because I got to see an early. This is obviously a film that before it caught a lot of buzz, and then it sort of started getting some earlier showings that was bringing out some really good reviews. Luckily enough, I got a chance to go and see the movie early before it got released. I think it was like 2 weeks before it got released in this tiny, dingy, fucking dirty cinema room that didn't even feel like a cinema room, but it was still a great experience to watch. And there are moments of this movie that you could tell definitely had effect on the audience. Like when I watch movies at a cinema, I really take it all in for myself, but I do love sitting in the cinema and seeing the reactions of other people at certain moments in it. And I think, Talk to Me, there's a lot of moments in this that definitely gets a reaction from people that are watching it.
For sure. What I like is that it's still a possession movie. It's I guess it's a haunted object movie, which is kind of adjacent to what I do, but it's such a different twist on the possession film, which I
Yeah,
like.
and that's it. I think, with horror, we all know, we've said it a million times, like we've seen it all before, and it's always going to be so different to create something that feels fresh, feels new. I mean, just look at Tubi, and all you do is see everything that's been made before, but because it's cheap, they make it and put it out there, and it's a pile of shit. Every now and again, you get a movie that is what we've seen before, but like you're saying, is done in what I would say as in a different way, or an intelligent way. They've taken a look at those movies that have come before it and seeing how they can bring a fresh approach to it. Like you're saying, and it is different to the normal possession movie, which is already exciting because we get so much of the same old shit.
Yeah, for sure. Like those Russell Crowe movies.
Yeah, exactly. Just taking those paychecks. So what better way to start sort of talking about this movie? Because obviously, these conversations from this point on, we don't know what we're talking about. It's just going to be a little bit of fun of a conversation, probably some chaos. I'm going to make myself look like a twat, but it is what it is. But what a great way to start a conversation by talking about the opening, because as we know, they do a little bit of a trick of cinema, because sometimes the movies that follow it, or the rest of the movies, can be utter shit. But what they do in this movie is already lead you into something that you're interested in. The film opens where some guys obviously sort of on the trek looking for his brother, going through this house party. He bashes the door down, which is obviously a cool little scene, comes out and ends up, like just stabbing people. And already it's something that leads you in because you're already interested in something, because unpredictability in horror is always something that, one, is the best sort of horror, but also it is not something that's all that common. We sort of know what's going to be happening in a lot of these movies that we watch. So straight away, Talk to Me sort of brings you into it, because you're like, oh, okay, well, I want to see where this goes, because why the fuck has this happened?
Well, yeah, you're immediately drawn into conflict, which is always nice.
Yeah,
I don't need a lot of backstory immediately,
Yeah, that's it. And like I said, it's sort of without creating all that backstory so far, it makes it interesting because you realise there's a previous, there's a before, there's a prequel to this in regards to the idea and of what's happening. Something has happened before. We're essentially at the tail end of that person's journey before he goes, doing some fucked up shit. And then the real movie starts, where we start then following the journey of the characters that we get to meet here. Obviously, I can't remember any of their names, but because I can't remember their names. But yeah, so we start following the journey of these characters through it, and it's really interesting. It's one of those movies. It's a very fresh approach of making a movie, but also it's a very fresh approach in approaching characters. They are modern day characters. They are modern day people within this movie, and they could be incredibly annoying, and I don't find them annoying. I don't know if you do, but I don't find them that annoying in this.
Some of the characters have annoying tendencies, but they have reasons why they're that way.
Right, okay, God, tell me the reasons.
Well, okay, so the main character, whose name is escaping me at this particular moment in time.
Yeah, I keep on thinking it's Mia, but that's fucking wrong, so I don't know what's going on.
It's Mia. It's
Mia. Is it? Oh, well, there we go, yes. I got it right. Jesus Christ,
I've done it. Okay, so Mia, and we'll get into it, but she has recently lost her mother.
Yes.
Which I gotta say, BP, when I first watched this movie back in 2022 when it came out, it was good. It resonated. There's feelings all about the place. It is a horror movie about trauma, which is big right now. But after losing my own mother this year and then rewatching it this past week for you, I'm like, oh, it's a bit different now.
I chose the wrong
Cuts
movie,
a
didn't
cuts a bit deep, BP. It cuts a
I? I'm
bit
really
deep.
sorry. Everybody's
But
going to think I'm a fucking arsehole now.
no, I chose it, guys. I chose this movie. Don't
She
be
did.
mad at him.
Anastasia chose it. Yeah, don't come at me. Anastasia chose it. But you're right. I think, like things do happen like that. I recently watched The Taking of Deborah Logan for the first time. And I'd never seen it before. Absolutely fantastic. Like, I don't know how I hadn't seen it before. But there are one of the characters, the main female in it. She is struggling with Alzheimer's and dementia, and I had that with my grandfather and my grandmother, who I was incredibly close with, and it was very difficult to watch. Like, I nearly had to turn it off. Because it was very difficult to watch, and I was very close to them. So it does. It gets very.
Yeah.
Movies are weird because we really do connect with them, and horror is something that really does a. It's difficult to say a good job because it's not a good job, but it does really do a job at making us connect with these movies or connect with these characters. I feel more than a lot of other genres, even though there are a lot of things that happen in these movies that are bad. But when you're on a journey with these characters who are going through these different things, I feel that there's some form of relatability to a lot of characters within horror that than a lot of other genres.
Hear me out. I think going through the emotional ride that is this movie with
Yeah.
Mia and the other characters, when you're going through something similar, is weirdly cathartic.
Yeah, but I think that's such a great thing to be able to take from just a movie,
For sure.
and
Yeah.
how, yeah. So that's really cool. But like we said, once again, I didn't choose it. Just
I did this to myself.
that's it. But yeah, so we've got all these characters. It's it's a fresh approach to all these characters. But also, I've Mia is an interesting one because it is also a character that along the way, because of everything that she's been through, she does make a lot of wrong choices within this movie. And some of that is down to her own choices and how that plays out. But it just seems to be like every step of the way that she goes in this movie to try and make something right, two things go wrong, and you sort of feel for her at the same time, but then at the same time she sort of gets herself into these situations. For example, when we're at one of the sessions that they're having, where she says that it's okay for the brother of her friend to do the the let me in, the talk to me sort of hand thing, and that's on
That
her, and that
that
sort
was
of
the
escalates
biggest
where the rest of the
mistake.
film goes. Yes, she made a huge mistake. And I feel like that's almost a lot of her life, in this movie, because she does set herself up for a lot of her own punishment. But at the same time, you sort of feel sorry for what she's going through as well. Like we mentioned earlier on, how you have a lot of sympathy for characters and so on. But in this, you sort of do with her as well, even though she does it to herself a lot.
Well, yeah, because when she does these things, it's not like she does them maliciously.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are selfish choices, but they're not done intentionally to harm other people. And they just keep working out that way, with the exception of like one specific thing. But she's at that point so far gone that it's, we'll get into it.
Yeah, that's it. So obviously, within Talk to Me, what we were talking about at the start, with it being a slight difference, is the possessions take form where they basically got this hand, and then once you essentially hold its hand, you say, "Talk to me." And then something appears in front of you, a sort of, a spirit, a ghost, a ghoul, not a goblin, unfortunately, but whatever it is. And then you say, "Let me in," and then it takes you over. And then that's when the real possession starts. But it comes out in the movie in multiple different forms. With Mia, it's sort of, so this is the interesting part, because I feel like there's the underlining aspect, and I don't know what you think or whether you think this as well. But so when Mia first goes under, the first thing that you see is this like weird sort of water woman that I'm assuming that she drowned or something like that, or something could happen to her anyway. That's the first sort of person that Mia sees when she's in it, and then when she says "let me in," then that person takes her over. Now, when you're within this, I think they say that you've got how long? Like 90 seconds, 60 seconds, or 90 seconds, something like that. And then if you go over that time, then you're fucked, basically.
Yeah, I think it's 60.
Yeah,
Maybe
something like
it,
that. And then, but with her, they go over that time. So what's interesting is that to where this story goes with Mia's journey through this is that what happens is that then all that shit happens. Then when she gets that the brother to her friend to take on to do it as well, the possession from that demon or whatever it is, not necessarily a demon, but that ghost, that ghoul, that is saying that it is Mia's mother. And that's where the sort of story goes, where she then thinks that her mother didn't commit suicide, and she then starts being mistrusting of her dad. And that sort of spirit, who I'm assuming that it's a malevolent spirit, not necessarily a good spirit, that one there is starting to lead Mia down a path of sort of darkness.
yeah, it's
And
what she wants to see.
yeah, exactly. So, and I think it sort of is a reason where it's latched onto the person that they feel maybe like troubled, so to speak.
Almost
Latched on.
vulnerable.
Yeah, that's it. Vulnerable. That's the better word that I was trying to think of that I can't think of. But what's I mean, one of the obviously the most violent probably of all the possessions in the movie is definitely the younger brother who's essentially life is pretty much ruined from such an incredibly dark moment in the movie, which obviously comes out of nowhere really, and it's the way that it's done. Obviously, I'm going to talk about the movie itself and the directing and the cinematography a little bit as well. We're just really sort of feeling out and talking about the movie itself at the moment. But that scene is a pretty messed up scene.
Yeah, it's a bit subsea. They can't get him to stop until they literally, like, put a hand in front of his head right as he's about to, like, smash it into the corner of a bookshelf or some kind of table.
Yeah.
And he's just, he's broken his nose, he's fractured cheekbones. Like, the reconstruction of surgery this kid needs is wild.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be a lot of money unless you've got NHS over in wherever they are, New Zealand, Australia, New Zealand, I think, wherever they are. If you've got healthcare, it's all right. If you don't, that kid's face is going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah, I think they're in Australia.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I could be. I don't know what I'm talking about. But
his name's Riley.
Riley, there we go. See, we got two now. That's two of them. The rest, I haven't got any idea of doing. But yeah, so that's an incredibly dark moment within the movie, and there are a lot of dark moments within this movie, and it sets them. I feel that this film sets them up really well. So this is quite a slow burn movie, and I like that in a way because what happens is it brings up the level of sort of the tense feeling of the movie or the terror, where it's building up this dread and this intensity where you're sort of waiting for the next thing to happen. But it's quite unpredictable, like I said at the start, where this movie's quite unpredictable as to when those moments happen. And they actually catch you off guard quite a bit. And that's what's really clever about the movie.
For sure. Yeah, because when she first takes the hand, you don't know how graphic or weird the ghosts are going to be, and they've only kind of told you that that's what she's going to see. They've just hinted at it, like by showing little like video clips on like TikTok, which is how they hint at it before it actually happens. It's good. It's modern.
Yeah, and that's it. And I feel like when I came away from this, and this could just be me being just an old bastard, but it does make me feel like that this movie is sort of playing on that aspect where it feels like that because of obviously social media, because of what anyone can post, that they're like this modern generation where like caution no longer exists. You know, like this is something that is obviously incredibly supernatural. It's killing people. It's doing these things. And this is put out to everyone. This is on whatever platform, whether it's TikTok or whatever they're using in it. This is put out to everyone. And I feel like this is actually how we are in real life, outside of obviously this movie verse, where people now, the younger generation, the caution sort of no longer exists.
Well,
And
you don't feel consequences.
Yeah, and it feels like it's all in aid for this form of acceptance. But then, it's almost like at what cost, at what consequence within this movie are you going to look for that acceptance? Because a lot of what Mia is looking for in this movie is acceptance from her friends, from the people around her. Because obviously, at the start of the movie, you get a couple of them who are the people that are setting up these things with the hand and the possessions, and they're the ones that are filming it and putting it online. But they don't like Mia, and it's once again she sort of almost goes into her doing it because of the acceptance and wanting to accept them.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Haley takes Jade, Mia's best friend, aside when she first gets there and is like, why did you bring her? I can't stand her because she's so clingy. She's so needy. She can't be alone with herself.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't know how to deal with herself alone.
Yeah, and that's it, and that's a huge part of the movie itself. And like I said, it feels like this movie almost feels very like it hits home quite well realistically with where we are as a society, or as the younger society, where I feel like it is very dangerous because there is no caution no longer. It is needing the acceptance, like I said, sometimes at what cost, at what consequence, because we weren't really like there for that, you know, like I know I wasn't because I'm an old bastard, so I wasn't around for that, you know, like this modern day you know, technology and everything isn't me, you know, and it's not my brain, and it's not how my brain works. And back then, if I did something wrong, or you know, did something that ended up hurting myself, that's because it's my own fucking fault. But now people are sort of posting stuff everywhere, and there is no understanding of what the consequence might be, because it's more about the acceptance. And I think that this movie plays a lot on acceptance.
For sure. She wants acceptance from her closest friends. She wants acceptance from her father. She wants acceptance from her peers. She wants acceptance from her mother that she can't get.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when we're talking obviously about these different characters, I think obviously I always have to talk about it, but performances wise, I think everybody does a really good job in this at keeping everything feel a little bit grounded when it could be, you know, very over top, bearing in mind it's a possession movie. I think the performances, they do a really good job. Obviously Mia in the main role, I think she does a really good performance. Obviously I think she's pretty creepy when she does do her possession, and I think she does a really good choice with choice with that. And I think that the voice that she did in that, she actually did. So it's, I mean, fair play to her, because that was fucking creepy. But I think overall, I think she is a really good lead in this movie, because I think she portrays like everything that we've spoken about so far on this, about her character, how there are choices that she makes, and she makes the wrong choice, and sometimes it's a choice you might know that she's making wrong, sometimes it isn't, sometimes it's about acceptance and being needed and everything like that. But I think she plays that really well. You don't get a sense of it where she's not playing it the way that she should. I think she does a really good job.
Yeah, absolutely. She knows, she's connected with the character and knows that character's soul.
Yeah, And I think everybody else does a good job. Obviously, one of the standouts of the movie is the name that I'll probably forget, Miranda Otto. Is that right? I think so.
She plays Jade's mom, Sue, and yes, it is Miranda Otto, wonderful Aussie actress. She was in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. She was also in a movie that I covered on my podcast about an Australian murder. So, she's a respected Australian actress.
Yeah, she's one of those that pops up. But she is probably the comic relief of this movie. When she pops up, you know that those moments are going to be things that is almost like the relief from this movie. This movie is a very heavy movie, and it's a very dark movie. And every now and again, you sort of need a breather. And she is sort of that breather until things later on in the movie start happening where she hasn't got that time to take that comedic approach, and she has to be the mother, and she has to be a lot more, tough on everyone.
Well, she's definitely the mother throughout, because even her comedic timing is literally like, touch my daughter's panties and you die, or...
Yeah, that's it. It's like when she's like going around and asking and almost interrogating everybody about where the party is or what party they're going to.
What time's the party?
That's it. And she's going around and like interrogating, and it's doing sort of like quick cuts between all the people she's talking to, and everybody's like clarifying their story, like that we're not going to a party and stuff like that. And then, but and there's part of her, yeah, and then she's just like, she knows that there is, but no one's letting her onto it. So but she's got a lot of really good moments in this movie. She does a great performance because, like I mentioned, her arc in it sort of changes throughout. Like you're saying, yeah, she's the mother throughout, but it's from start to finish. It's like the darker the movie gets, the less time she's got to be as a viewer, she's got less time to be our comic relief because the movie's taking on that form of we're going sort of very dark with this. Obviously, there's that very short moment that we get that reminds us of Society. Where we get to see is it hell? I mean, are we saying that it's hell where they are, or where he's trapped, or is it just something like limbo or purgatory or something like that?
So, according to the demon, so the trustworthiness is questionable.
Don't trust demons.
Yes, but according to the demon that claims to be Mia's mother, he is in purgatory, limbo, and they are waiting. He will suffer there forever because he wasn't. The ceremony wasn't closed or whatever when they let the ghosts in.
Yeah, because they didn't blow out the candle. Like that, that's it. Yeah. And yeah, he's stuck, but you get that very brief glimpse of what essentially, like you're saying, purgatory, but it reminds me so much of Society where they're all fucking blended together, and it's only a very small scene, like a small little clip, and then you're like, I want to see more of that shit.
Okay, so they're like blended together, but they're also like fleshy and kind of mutilated, so it's like Society Hellraiser, and I do want to see more.
I want to see more. I mean, I'm all for fucking. I mean, we know we both love body horror, so we're like, we want some more of that fucking shit. But it'd be interesting to see. You never know what might come later, which I'll talk a little bit more about as well.
Yeah, they're doing a sequel for sure.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. I hope so. There better be. I hope so, but I think I've got a little bit in here about that later. I think I got, because I tried going online to see what the latest sort of news about it was, and I think I've got a little bit about it as well. But yeah, performances in it is absolutely fantastic. Obviously, within this movie, one of the things that I did notice is how water. Basically, it sort of goes back to the demon that possessed Mia. I still believe that that's the demon that's possessing her, because a lot of the film is centered around water. So there's a lot of moments where there's water in the background, or there's water around. So water brings a big part in this. But one of the other things that makes me think that it's the initial sort of spirit or whatever you want to call it. I ain't got a fucking better name, but you know what I mean. That she encounters is because obviously that one looks like that she has drowned or was drowned or whatever, and we don't know that character's story. But the mum, when she is coming back as the ghost, as a spirit, throughout it, every time she goes, she starts looking more and more like that spirit that she encounters first, because she starts getting more
damp.
wet.
Yeah,
She starts getting wet and she gets a little bit more damp. And I feel like that is where the demon, whether it is a demon, whether it is a ghost or whatever it is, I feel like that might be where the grip is loosening on Mia, because that's when she starts ramping up the whole, your mum didn't do this, and then that's when she has to approach her dad, and then obviously we know what happens with that scene as well, where Mia ends up stabbing her own dad in the neck and stuff, and then that's obviously when it's gone completely fucking tits up for Mia. That's when she is going mad, and doing all the wrong things that she really shouldn't. But that's because once again, she's a troubled person, and she's dealing with what she's dealing with, and this whatever it is, this entity is feeding off that.
Yeah, and she's believing what he's selling, or she's selling, whatever, it's selling wholesale,
Yeah, that's it. And I think it does all stem back to the first possession that she has, where it was all, this demon was all sort of waterlogged, so to speak. It was just all covered in water and everything like that. I feel like that has followed her, because obviously she goes over that time limit on her first possession. I feel that has followed her throughout. So when I watched this movie, I did notice that there was a lot of water plays a really big part in it, and obviously to that entity, water was obviously essentially what killed her. So I feel like they're playing on that quite a bit, where obviously this entity, this whatever it is playing off that and feeding off Mia, and she starts losing her grip on her as the film goes on, and then obviously she essentially gets what she wants at the end of it, which is all a little bit fucked up. But we'll get to that, because I do want to talk a little bit about the ending, because obviously that's something that's interesting as well. So there's a couple other things that I really, really love about this movie. I'll get into one in a minute, but what I really want to talk about is something that really, really impressed me about this movie when I watched it, when I watched it on my sort of screening that I had, and when I watched it at home. It was still fantastic. And that is, this film has some of the best sound design I have heard, or, in a movie for a long, long time.
For sure.
And how I know that it's so effective in sound in this movie is when I went and watched that screening that I watched. Now, there is a moment in this movie, and where it isn't horror, and it isn't blood and guts and gore and anything like this. It is when Mia is essentially having like a breakdown, and she goes into her room and she starts slapping herself on the face, around the head. The sound design on that is so good that the people that I was watching the movie with, they were jumping more than anything that happened in that film, because the sound design is so fantastic in that moment that it genuinely sounds like she's truly slapped the shit out of herself. And it was so good that they just, upped the sound of it, like put the bass or the treble or whatever it was up on it. And it's those little moments in movies like this that always stand out to me. And this, once again, this is one of the reasons why, when you said about Talk to Me, I wanted to, because this is one of those movies that isn't just, this is a movie and it's all right and it's good and you haven't got much to talk about, because there's not much to talk about. This is a movie that does have a lot to talk about, and there's more that I want to go into about it. But the sound design in this movie is phenomenal. I don't know if that's something that you noticed as well, but it's so good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
I also think the whispers are really well done. To the point where you feel like they're behind you almost, and you can feel the hairs on your neck. That's something I noticed about this, especially when you have the surround sound on. It's
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's what's interesting, and I'll get in. Obviously, once again, that's the next thing I want to go into, because talking about the sound then leads into this, and then the creating the movie and so on. But that's something that I really wanted to point out, because sound design and sound in horror, as we know, is something that's incredibly important, because sound is something that really, whether it's the score, the music, or whether it is, like I mentioned, just somebody slapping themselves around the face, but yet that being the most fucked up bit of the movie for so many people that I watched the screening with. Even though this has some messed up moments, that's the bit. The sound design was so good in this movie that it's another highlight as to how important it is to horror, because horror has so many different aspects in it. And without, you look at movies like The Evil Dead and stuff like that, the sound design in the Evil Dead movies is absolutely phenomenal. And not just the music, but as I said, it's the sound design itself. It's something that always stands out to me, because it really highlights the movie as to what it's trying to do and what it's trying to build. The sound in this, in Talk to Me, is really good at driving what is supposed to be happening, or how you're supposed to feel when you're watching it.
Somebody should pay those Foley artists more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody that does a job as good as they do in Talk to Me, they need to be paid the fucking big bucks.
I wonder what they were doing to make that head sound. It's always interesting to me to find out what the actual sound is, you know?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't realize that. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm sure it is. But it's Mia who, the voice that she does of her possession when she's getting possessed. That's her doing it. And the way, yes, they amplify it, and yes, they add, like, obviously the things to it. But the fact that she could do that, and they realize that that's something that they can create a bigger moment with. It's just really really well done. So it's absolute kudos to the sound design in this movie, because we get, obviously, look, we watch so many horrors, and like I said, it is, some of them are just movies and they're there, but when you get a movie like this that you can sort of take apart a little bit and take moments from it, then that's always when you know that it's a movie worth talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so going into the what I'll go into next is going to be about the directing. Now, the reason I want to talk about this, I'll talk a little bit more probably about them later as well, is that the sound design is obviously absolutely fantastic, but the people, in the hot seat helming the movie, the brothers, Philippou, which is once again obviously completely wrong, more than likely. This is the first movie that they've made. I'm not going to go into everything that they did before and all that sort of stuff at the moment, but this is the first full feature film that they've made, and I don't know if you feel the same, but this does not feel like a movie made by people that this is their first movie.
No, they must have really honed their craft in short film.
Yes. Yeah, that's something I'll talk about a little bit later, because there's some people obviously out there that still might not know their sort of origins, where they came from, and so on like that. And that's what I said at the start, where it's a really interesting movie, this, but the journey to get to this movie is really interesting as well. And that's what I want to talk about as well. But this film, looks, obviously we've spoken about how it sounds, but this film looks really great as well. Like, it looks very modern, but also at the same time, you can tell that they're a fan of cinema. You can tell that they're a fan of horror, because they understand the beats in regards to aesthetically, they understand what works. They understand that this camera shot or this lens or whatever is going to lead into this. It's not, so many films now, everything's a close up, and then you don't understand anything's going on. You don't see anything. In this, there's a lot of moments where you see a lot of everything that's going on. And that is so important to horror, because sometimes in a shot, nothing happens or nothing is happening, and you're waiting for something to happen in the background or something like that. And you're just waiting for something, but sometimes nothing even happens. And in this movie, it does a lot of that. They do a lot of shots where Mia is just sitting down, but it's showing a lot of everything behind her. And that's filmmaking, you know, to me, because then you're constantly on the edge of your seat in this movie, because you're constantly waiting for the next thing to happen, because you already know that this film is very unpredictable, so you're waiting for the next thing.
Yeah, for sure. And oh my gosh, like talking about something you don't really expect. I didn't expect the mother to come at Mia with such ferocity after the inciting incident.
Yeah, yeah. She was literally like, get away from my kids, essentially, and don't come back here, and so on, like that. And
she acted
yeah,
like Mia stabbed him with a knife and was his wholesale assailant, and that's
yeah,
just that felt
yeah,
like a lot.
yeah. And it's interesting as well, because it's, you know, Mia's obviously had a troubled past, and we get hints of that in the movie. And, you know, whether that is something where she may have dealt with drugs in the past, I don't really know. But you never really know what happens before the movie for people to not like her, like they mention in it, or not trust her. You know, because you think with everything that she's gone through, um, people would want to try and help her with that, and there are obviously people that are trying to help her with that. But what has she done within the movie to, or, you know, before we see her in this movie, what has she done to lead people to not necessarily like her? Or so that moment is also like really interesting to me, because even though, like you mentioned, that she's almost like a mother to everyone, or especially to Mia, you know, Mia is quite clearly part of their family in a way, because of the relationship, you know, that she has with her daughter and her son. She's obviously troubled, as we know, Mia, but there is something to that where people can't trust her, and it's interesting. It'll be interesting to know what that is before that makes people not trust her. And I think that that's a big part as to why the mother, it felt like she almost was like, I knew this was going to happen, or one day this was going to happen, where you were going to do something that really you shouldn't do, or you can't get away from.
So I think she's just made like wayward decisions in her grief, and people have given her a lot of lenience in that, I think, and maybe she's taken that too far in some
Yeah,
regards. But perhaps also there's other people planting negative thoughts into other people's minds about her. For
yeah,
instance, like at the party, Haley says
yeah,
to Jade, better watch out, she's going to steal your boyfriend, just because she's like lightly playing around with her. And then
yeah.
things get a little weirder later.
Yeah, that's it, and they do. And I think there is a lot of that trust element with Mia, where she is quite. She's, like I said earlier on, it feels like Mia is one of those people that's always putting herself into situations that she doesn't really either understand, or doesn't understand what the effects afterwards might be. Obviously, she does that within the movie. You know, she doesn't really think that anything seriously is going to happen to, you know, the brother in the movie, or who somebody she sees as her brother. She doesn't want any harm to come of him. But because of that need and the acceptance that we've mentioned about and stuff, or wanting to be liked and all that sort of stuff, it always goes sort of wrong for her, like we've mentioned, and that happens throughout the movie. And I think, as I said, when that scene happened with the mum, I sort of got the sense, like, I felt like the mum was just waiting for something to happen, and it was always going to be Mia that did it. So I thought, yeah,
What's so heartbreaking about all of this is the fact that Mia, in a lot of ways, is a better big sister to Riley than Jade. Jade
yeah,
is just bitchy to him all the time. Mia goes and picks him up when he's hanging out with a friend. You know,
yeah.
like,
Run over a kangaroo.
oh, that scene. She couldn't do it. She wasn't strong enough. And
It wasn't
that's
strong.
and that is a through line in the movie. She's never strong enough to make the right decision.
Yeah, that's it. And then we get, and obviously we're talking about obviously the movie itself and the cinematography and the ending scene. Obviously, you know, look, anybody that's watching this should have watched the movie, but obviously there's always spoilers because we're having a proper conversation about everything that happens in it.
Yes.
But the ending of the movie, the scene that we get of her in the road, which I'm going to get to as well because I want to talk about the ending and see your thoughts on how you feel about it. But the shot is very similar to the shot that we get when the kangaroo is in the road, and we get a shot sort of over top, and it's almost the same sort of shot of her lying in the road.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's just this film in general. They did an absolutely fantastic job at creating something that feels fresh, something that also homages horror on an aesthetical or a technical level sense. Because this film doesn't. This film does something that's really cool as well. And I mean, you could think completely different, but this film doesn't necessarily remind me a lot of other movies.
No, I can't think of any specific movie that it makes me think of at all, actually. Come
Yeah,
to think of
and
it.
I think that that's a really good thing because obviously we watch a lot of movies that a lot of the main aspect of it is that it's trying to make you think of other movies within the genre that are successful, and they struggle to be their own sort of thing. And Talk to Me, I think, does a really good job at being its own thing.
Yes, I would say that the only thing that I think it sort of reminds me of a tiny, teeny bit is Bodies, 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 and
Yeah, yeah,
that's purely in the sense that it's focused on like the Gen Z generation. It's focused
yeah.
on them spending a lot of time with their own technology, and it focuses a lot on their own youthful mistakes.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. If anything, if it's going to think of anything, yeah, bodies, bodies, bodies. But like you're saying, that's because of the setting in regards to characters, not setting in regards to the movie itself. For example, is this? I mean, for me personally, is this better than Bodies, Bodies, Bodies? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, because this to me feels like a real movie, a real cinematic movie that obviously is technically crafted, so to speak. The other movie, Bodies, 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 I actually quite enjoy it. I know a lot of people have
Comedy, it's
problems with it.
fun.
It's fun, exactly. That movie's fun. It's not like this where it's incredibly dark and so on, and and it's a proper possession movie. It is fun, Bodies, Bodies, and obviously has an absolutely fucking banging ending that I absolutely love. And I love the fact that it just sets up the whole fucking movie of what we've just seen. If you haven't seen Bodies, 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 watch it. It it's just fun, but
It
it
is
isn't
fun.
this movie
No.
where this movie is one of those movies. Like I said, the reason I wanted to talk about this when you said about it is because this is more than just a movie. There is a technical cinematic craft created in this movie where the people behind it, that like I've said I will talk about a little bit, they created something that I feel like everyone could see. Everybody, when they saw this at the cinema or on streaming, like I've already mentioned with IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, this is sort of mostly universally enjoyed. And you only really get that when it is a movie that is technically crafted really, really well in all aspects. Because if you've got this movie has an idea, a concept, a story that has been done before. Possession movies have been going for a long, long, long time. But the fact that this does something that doesn't make us really think of all the other ones at the same time, that's a win.
It also does something else that I think is maybe, and the fact that you haven't brought it up means maybe it's not quite as heavy handed as I thought it was, but it's also very clearly an allegory on addiction.
Yes, yeah, you're right, yeah. And that's what makes me once again think about Mia as a character of what came before this movie. Because yeah, you're right. This film, there is a lot about addiction, whether that is the modern day addiction of what social media is and TikTok and all that sort of stuff, and how they are essentially within the movie saying that it is like a drug, and
Yeah.
people need this, and people
They
need to
want to
have
get back and let more in. They can't get enough
yeah
of it.
Absolutely, yeah, you're absolutely right. This film does, have that heavy underlining aspect of addiction.
It's got that great scene when they're having the party at Jade's house right before all the shit hits the fan, where they're doing like a circular tracking shot, and
Yes, yeah,
you just see all the kids just like joking around and laughing and taking pictures and rubbing their hands together and getting ready to go toe to toe with the hands. And
yeah,
it could be that same shot, just replace the hand with like beer pong, and it totally
yeah.
works.
Yeah, and also what's scary about that is that, like I said earlier on, is that they're not thinking about this with any consequence whatsoever. Like within this movie,
No.
this is real. Like within the
Yeah.
confines of this movie, what is happening is real,
Mhm.
and they do not care that possession is real. They're putting this out to everybody that this is real. Like the supernatural possession is a real thing in real life. Like I don't believe in this sort of stuff.
No.
So so they're saying within the confines of this movie that this is real, and they don't care about the cost, the consequences, because
Nope.
like you're saying, it's an addiction. They need to be, what is happening is going to make them accepted, and that's a scary thing to me. That to me is scarier than more than that. Than to what really happens in the movie is the need of acceptance through social media and all that sort of stuff with this movie.
Yeah, and there's also like I'm sure just like anytime when you get a like or whatever, you get a little not adrenaline, but you get some dopamine, that dopamine hit.
Yeah.
I think you get like a super euphoric feeling while or at least you experience it maybe after you come out of the possession, because the way Mia reacts after that going over, she's like, that was incredible, I want to do that again,
Yeah, yeah.
That's a slippery slope.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's a heavy underlining of addiction in this as well. But there was loads of like little things as well. I don't know if you noticed. I'm sure you did because you've got a better eye than me at these sort of things. But I did notice that Mia pretty much throughout the movie wears yellow as well. And I did notice that at the start of the movie when she's wearing yellow, it's like a very bright sort of yellow, a cardigan throughout the movie. The color yellow becomes a little bit like faded. It's not as bright. It's not as like sort of as what it is. But I did want to look that up a little bit, so I had to Google it. But one meaning of the color is caution, as that is as an indication of how we are supposed to approach her character as the viewer, or the other potential meaning is of hope. And as throughout the movie, the yellow on her is less colourful until it's gone. He's saying that all hope for Mia is gone. So there's two ways to look at it. It's like the yellow, the yellow could mean that it's caution for everybody around her, and for everybody to be caution, for us as viewers to be worried about everybody that's around her. And the yellow to Mia herself could mean hope. But obviously, as the movie goes on, she starts to lose hope because she starts becoming, like we've mentioned, addicted to trying to figure out her own sort of mystery with her mother. But unfortunately, everything else is going to pot and going tits up, and then the yellow sort of starts to fade on her and so on. So little things like that in a movie. Once again, like I said, this isn't just I'm going to get a camera, I'm going to film it. There's more to it.
Yeah, and I will say this though, even if the color didn't have some special meaning, I'm sure the wardrobe department was like, yes, go with that because it's a good color for her coloring.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's either one of those things where, but then once again, that's a good thing, isn't it? Like you think to yourself, so a lot of people like myself, you try and take things from movies, but if a movie's shit or it's not as good, or if it's not created in the way that it has been, like with Talk to Me, you don't then start thinking of those things. The amount of movies I've sat there and been like, there was nothing to that and I don't have to see it ever again. Or if I do, there's still nothing to it. Whereas with this movie, I look forward to seeing it again because I don't know if there's going to be other things that I pick up on. Like when I first saw it, I didn't pick up on the whole yellow sort of thing. It was only when I watched it again and I started noticing that she was wearing yellow, or I started to notice the whole water being an influence, and whether that is a connection to the first time that she gets possessed and she's in there longer. This is one of those movies that every time you watch it, there's going to be extra things that you pick up on, and that is good. That's fun. So I think that you're right. It could just be the fact that yellow looks bloody good on screen, and there's nothing fucking to it whatsoever. They're like, let Mia wear yellow, or there could be more to it, and it could be more integral to her character as the way you're supposed to look at her.
Or maybe it's a little bit of column A, or a little bit of column B.
Yeah. It's there's so much to think about with this movie. What I want to know what you think about is the ending itself. Before we start going into sort of like some production info and facts and so on, the ending itself. So the ending itself is pretty quick, and it happens. Now, there are a lot of people, and even people that I've spoken to, are a little bit divided as to what happens. For me, so setting up the ending is Mia ends up believing that pretty much the only way to get that the brother of the story is essentially trapped in purgatory. He can't really escape, so Mia essentially takes him out the hospital to essentially. So he's no longer in pain in purgatory. That's what she feels. That's what she's being told. So she's essentially going to end his life by putting him into oncoming traffic, if I'm right.
Yes, that seems to be the case. Why it had to be oncoming traffic, beyond me.
Because they've got to get the kangaroo shot. But what is interesting to me at that moment is a lot of people were still undecided as to how it happens. So what happens is Mia, she goes down the hill, and she is essentially about to push the brother. It's so bad I can't remember his name, but Riley, that's it, Riley, into the thing. But really quickly, the sister, the real sister, Riley's sister, comes down. Jade, that's it. Jade comes down the hill. Yes, this is why you're better at this than me. But Jade comes down the hill, and it's very quick, and then it sort of cuts. And then you notice that obviously, Mia's in the middle of the road where she ends up waking up. And once again, I'm going to talk about that moment a little bit more as well. When in that moment, do you feel, because I know how I think it plays out, but a lot of people have different opinions. I think that obviously that the sister Jade got there just in time, and she ended up pushing Mia into the oncoming traffic by saving her brother.
Yeah.
Is that how you feel as well?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, good. Because I know there's some people online that have sort of looked at different things, because there's basically, they do that shot again very quickly, where you can sort of, after it happens, they go back a little bit where you can see it on a different, from the perspective of the person driving the car or the van or whatever. And I feel like at that moment you can just about see that Jade, stops her pushing the brother in, and then Mia goes in front of the traffic as well. So I asked that because I was wondering if you had a different thought on that, but luckily we're both right. So that's all that matters.
Yeah, exactly.
So in that moment, Mia wakes up, but she isn't awake. She's dead, or now she is now stuck in purgatory, or is she actually dead? Who knows? That's an interesting ending.
I think she's dead.
Okay. I think she's dead as well, because obviously that's not something that's going to be easy to survive. But what's interesting about that is that then she starts walking into the darkness and so on like that, and then there's a light essentially at the end of this tunnel. Obviously it's not a tunnel, but you know what I mean. And then she goes to it, and then she becomes part of this possession sort of thing, whatever you want to call it. She is now part of it.
Someone takes on the hand, and she just happens to be the spirit on the other side.
Yeah. So do you think that, because obviously in the movie that they do mention very briefly that there is another hand that's embalmed. Do you think that hand, because obviously it doesn't, I don't think, obviously it's not America that they're in, I don't think, or somewhere,
They're in Australia.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know where it is, but it feels like the hand that she is now, when somebody is essentially calling on her, and then we see that in the movie. That doesn't seem like Australia or America. So I'm wondering whether you think that the theory within the movie that there is a different hand. Do you think that as well?
That makes sense because the last we saw, she had the hand.
Yes.
Nobody,
Yeah.
nobody in the scene with the wreckage and everything is picking that hand up and being like, "Talk to me."
Yeah, because you don't know. Because I was just like, I wonder if anybody like picked it up and then like maybe like Jade or someone was like, oh shit, or like the brother, and they were all like, shit, we know what this hand is, so we're gonna fucking FedEx it somewhere and, and let somebody else deal with it.
Why wouldn't they just destroy it? Because it's not like
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Oculus mirror where it tricks you, you know?
Yeah, that's right. So it makes it then more interesting as well because we know that there's more than one out there as well. And what other stories, what other journeys can we be taking on with it?
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see that for sure.
Absolutely. So obviously on the show, I always do some like production info, facts, things that I find really interesting that I found out about the movie. Early versions of the hand included one that was attached to a board, but practice runs made it clear it needed to be more flexible and easy to handle. The artist who finalized the hand design completed it and immediately quit. The directors were not sure why, although there were apparently rumors that something disturbed him. They made 5 copies as they expected the hand to break, but it never did. So he fucked off. He was just like, no, maybe it's real.
I hope not.
I hope not.
So A24, they're on their website. They have a version of the hand that is an incense burner or a pipe, depending on how you want to look at it. It's either one. But I want one so bad, and I'm on the wait list. But it's a perfect
replica. So,
yeah, it's a perfect replica. It's so cool.
How expensive is it, though?
Like at least $100 American.
Shit.
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah. But then at the same time, it's part. It's a cool collector's piece, right?
Yeah, I want one.
But let's just hope that like it isn't real because obviously, the guy that made it seems to think it was because he fucked right off.
This is a manufactured thing on their website. It's not the original hand from the movie, so I don't care.
No, let's hope not. Hopefully, no bits were like made. It's a bit like that bit in Child's Play where Chucky's like they're remaking Chucky, and then some of the original Chucky goes into it and it all mixes around. You got to hope that no essences of the original hand are put into every manufactured piece.
Oh God!
Everyone's fucked.
Yeah, because then you've got an army.
That's it. Everybody's going to be stuck in limbo. The society limbo. I fucking hope not. The directors. This is quite cool. So the directors gave every head of department what they called a foot down card. Basically, it was a card that they could pull when they felt very strongly that something should be a certain way. The costume designer used hers regarding Mia's yellowish sweater. So there's a little bit there as well. But I like that because it goes to show the intentions that they wanted to create something that was good. They wanted to create something, and also it's the understanding that maybe that the people that they're working with, they might have the experience that they don't. And because this is their first movie, so understanding and saying to people, look, like, let's have this in place, because if you think that this isn't right or something could be better, it might be something that we don't see as directors because we haven't done this before in a movie format,
Sure.
As a feature film. So I think that's a really, really, really mature way of filmmaking, because obviously we hear a lot of horror stories coming from movie sets, and unfortunately that's just what happens. To know that they, essentially were on set saying to people, look, foot down, whatever it is, you tell me what you think might be right. I think that's really, really, really well done. Good way of filmmaking.
Absolutely, because I feel like you see too many times directors who forget that a film is a collaborative effort. Like
Yes, absolutely.
it takes a village to make a movie, not just one person. I mean, sometimes it can be one person, but then those movies are not very good usually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because they haven't taken anything on board. So that's fair play to both the incredibly talented brothers that obviously created this movie. What obviously is a huge thing with this movie is that the budget of it was 4.5 million. So it was a very small budget movie, and it definitely doesn't look like a small budget movie at all. Once again, like we've mentioned, the kudos to everybody on board creating this movie. But it made 92.2 million at the box office, so nearly made 100 million at the box office when it came out, which is a massive success. So, like I said, critically and commercially, it done a fantastic job.
No, for sure. It came out of nowhere, and that was what was so great about it.
Yeah. So Danny and Michael Philippou turned down the chance to direct an unknown film in the DCEU. I assume that's DC Comics movies. I think in favor of having Talk to Me be their directorial film debut. So before this came out, they turned down the idea of directing a superhero movie, which
That
is
was absolutely the right decision.
absolutely. Thank God that they did. But that leads really well into why. What I want to talk about really quickly is why I find the process to this movie really interesting. So, Michael and Danny Philippou, they created a YouTube channel over 10 years ago now. They were very early on in the YouTube game. I mean, they've got now nearly over 7 million subscribers. Some of their videos are reaching over 50 million views. But it's a channel called Raka Raka. And what I find really interesting is that I knew what Raka Raka was before I knew this movie, what I knew what Talk to Me was. And in fact, I didn't even know that they were making Talk to Me. It was only when I started seeing the trailers and stuff like that and looking into it more that I realized it was the people that created Raka Raka. Some people online, if you go on YouTube and so on, you would have actually seen their videos maybe without even knowing it, because they did really, really clever high-end videos that involved like a really dark version of Ronald McDonald. They did a Marvel versus DC thing. They did a Harry Potter versus Star Wars. They also did a lot of backyard wrestling videos. And a lot of it is all and they did a lot of very adult themed. But when you watch these movies with these short sort of things they did on YouTube, they are very, very well done. And you can see that there's some true talent there for filmmaking. And that's why I think it's really interesting, because these are people that were just creating YouTube videos, but YouTube videos done very well. And there was definitely a cinematic approach to it. So the reason I've put that in there is, for one, if you want to go and see the early starts of these two incredibly talented brothers and what they did, just go to YouTube and watch some Raka Raka videos, and you'll see where they sort of came from. But I like knowing that that's where they came from, and you can see in their videos their dedication to what they're trying to do, and you can tell they're very passionate about what they did and what they did. And now you can sort of see within, especially the things that they did, because they have done a few darker, or they've done some like horror themed videos, sort of they did. But now, when you know that, you can see the transition into creating a feature film a little bit more plausible, because of how good that they were at doing what they were doing a long time ago.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So if you don't really know what Raka Raka is, and you didn't know that they created that channel, go and watch some of their videos. They're very well done. It's crazy what they managed to do with just them, and obviously they managed to create something good as well. One of the other things, obviously, that I do want to mention is that apparently, and like you also mentioned, apparently a prequel to Talk to Me has already been filmed, but they're not sure whether we'll ever see it. Now, you did speak about a sequel. I think at some point we may get a sequel. They have a new movie finalized, and I find this quite interesting. So their new movie that's going to be coming out is called Bring Her Back. Now, what I find quite interesting about that is that they're saying that this isn't a movie about Talk to Me, which is fine. If it's not, it's not, and I'm excited to see what comes next. But that's a pretty decent name for a movie that ends like this, or for the subject of what this is. Even if it is working with different characters, Bring Her Back is a pretty good name for a Talk to Me sequel. So
I think so, yeah.
Part of me seems to think that it might be a Talk to Me sequel. It might have a connection to Talk to Me. I don't know. Part of me hopes that there is, because like yourself, I feel that this is a type of movie that really can open it up to very interesting and also very terror driven ideas. Like we mentioned there, we've already seen that tiny glimpse of how fucked up purgatory can be. I think there's a lot of room to play with in this sort of sandbox of the idea that they've created in their universe, their Talk to Me. So the fact that their next movie is called Bring Her Back, either way, if it's nothing to do to Talk to Me and I'm talking absolute shit, which is normally what happens, if it is potentially part of that world that they've created, then good. If it's not, I'm going to be excited either way. But Bring Her Back, I'm still, part of me is like, I'd like to go on record to say maybe,
Hey, I'm good either way. I just am excited to see the rest of their career.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. And I think that's very exciting. In horror. In horror, like I've mentioned, we've seen it all, and when we get something that's a little bit exciting, we sort of latch on to that as well, and we want to know more, not just about the movie or whatever, but we want to know more about the people behind the movies and where they're going to go next and how they're going to excite us next on their next film. So you're exactly right. No matter what it is, I'm looking forward to it, because we hope that we get another film not only as successful as this for horror, because obviously horror is the thing that saves cinema every fucking time, because it just keeps on making money no matter how shit they are. But at the same time, we do get the odd gem like this that really deserves to be seen, and it's bloody brilliant. Obviously, that leads us really easily into very quickly overall thoughts on the movie.
Overall, it's really good meditation on grief, the themes of addiction that go along with grief, and it just has some awesome, cool sound design and effects, and not enough gore, but some good gore.
Yeah, it's one of those. It holds back on some things, but I think it's one of those moments one of those films where it relies on the shock value of when they happen, and when we do get those moments, like we've mentioned, the possession of the brother being whatever his bloody name is, Riley. When Riley gets his possession, and that's such a violent scene. So I'm with you. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, but I feel like that possibly was a decision that they made, where they were like, let's hold back on that because we can bring it out in the moments we need to. But also, I'd love to see a little bit more body horror with the fucking purgatory shit.
Yeah, I want to know what it's like inside Riley's head. What's going on there?
Yeah. What's going on exactly? And then very quickly, favorite scene, if you have one, a favorite scene in the movie.
I like the scene. It's part of the party scene where all the shit happens, but it's like in that montage, you see Mia's character all black-eyed, but she's just singing French with like a perfect French accent.
Yeah,
and it adds a little bit of lightness right before the dark, and I enjoyed that.
Yeah, and and that's a really good way of putting it as well, because horror does that a lot, and it's at best when it can do that. And this film does this really well, where it has a lot of light before the dark, and then that sort of fades throughout the movie, where we get a lot of light with the dark, and then a bit more light with before the dark, and then the light fades, a bit like her cardigan.
Okay, like her cardigan.
That's it, absolutely. My favourite scene in the movie, quite honestly, is selfish is the wrong word, but it's because look, everybody out there that knows the channel knows that acting, filmmaking, that's what I want to do with life. So there are the little moments, and it is a scene that I spoke about earlier. I love the scene, and it's the impact that it had on the people when Mia is unfortunately in the movie slapping herself around the face and hurting herself. I just felt that the sound design on that truly showed the talent that we were dealing with. You know, moments like that can be throwaway, can mean nothing, and the fact that a slap round the face was the biggest impact of the movie for so many people that I was watching it with. And even the other day when I was watching it, it's just the sound design, the way that scene is shot, is when that sort of thing is something that's exciting for me, because when I watch these movies with that filmmaker brain and these filmmaker eyes, there are moments in movies where I'm like, that is very well done. And I really appreciate little moments like that. So even though this movie is a moment that has so many fantastic scenes, my favorite scene is a moment that's not even necessarily horror. It's just very well made.
Sure. Okay, let me ask you a question about how you feel about the sound design of Riley in the shower post injury.
Oh yeah, so when he's in the shower and then he's smashing his head against the things on the floor.
The ceramic tiles.
The tiles, yeah.
The way the meat slapping, like his head being bludgeoned, is so good. It sounds
they do. It sounds real. It's like does. They do such the impact, as I said, and I've said it a lot, and the impact of sound design in this movie is unbelievable. Like I said, and I'll go on record as saying that this is the best sound design that we've got in a movie for a long time. For me personally, especially from a low budget horror that came out of nowhere, the sound design in this movie is phenomenal.
I just had a thought. I think the last time that I really felt this affected by the sound design was the Babadook, which is also Australian. Okay, yeah.
They're so good at bloody sound design.
You Aussies, you're great at it. I love it.
Exactly. Anybody who's listening to this who's Australian, oh, that was awful. Why did I try and do an accent? Oh, fuck. I apologise. Even though my name is Australian, but
it didn't even sound like you did anything.
Oh, good. Thank God. But you are great at sound design. You're obviously, you're great filmmakers in general. But sound design, Australian, South Africa, and everything like that. The filmmaking that comes from those countries are absolutely phenomenal. Sound design, absolutely bloody brilliant, and it was apparent in this movie. So now we move on to a segment that I always do on the show. Your first time. I will ask, it gives you a little bit of time, Anastasia, but you can either think of it or make it up. I always ask you what your first horror movie memory is as well. We get there at the end. But your first time is where I ask you, amazing horror fans. You don't even have to be horror fans. You just send me over the first horror movie memory that you have, and I add it into the episode. So this one is from Vinny. They are at leisurely Vinny. They sent me this over on Twix, which is what I call X and Twitter. Just call it Twix. So you can go and find them on there. And they put that I was maybe 9 or 10. My grandfather was a person who loved collecting movies, especially classics, horror, comedy, etc. One of his favourites was The Shining, obviously one of the greatest movies of all time. He would always try to scare me and my siblings/cousins by popping his head out from somewhere and go, "Here's Johnny." So he ended up asking him where he got "Here's Johnny" from, as his name was Bill. And then he showed me The Shining, and after that we went straight to Eraserhead. So there we go. So obviously, Yeah, absolutely. From The Shining to
David
Eraserhead
Lynch.
to David Lynch. That's it. It's yeah. People think that obviously The Shining's, quite out there, a bit risk, a bit art housey or stuff. I
Yeah, it
mean,
was made by
David Lynch.
Kubrick.
Exactly. David Lynch is on a different sort of level in regards to
Art
something that's
house.
out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, to art house and something that's completely out there. But yeah, thank you so much to Vinny, as I said, at leisurely Vinny from Twix, sending that over. If you want yours read out on the show, sometimes I do one, sometimes I do a couple. I do however many I want. It's my bloody show. But
Exactly.
if you want it read out on the show, think of it like free promo for your shit. Then you can send them over to me on any social media platform. Send it in a direct message if you can, because then I can just copy and paste it, and then I can read it out on the episode. Anastasia, if you can remember, or just bloody make it up, what was your first horror movie memory?
Okay. I feel like I've told you this before.
I
Probably.
think you definitely have.
But
I'm sure you have. But do it
well,
again. Well,
okay,
yeah.
guys. So my father was the man who had just so many. I mean, he's still alive. So I guess he still is. But he has tons of VHSs. He always had, so many, and a lot of them were just, categorized, and he recorded all of them himself for the most part. I mean, sure he had official ones, but there was just a wall of ones that he did himself, like all the Twilight Zones. But like one of my earliest memories, which I guess because it was so bizarre, is why it stood out to me. So he had a tape of one of Sam Raimi's like super early short films. And so Sam Raimi is standing in the kitchen. It's like super grainy. It looks like it could literally be shot on video. It might have been. And there's the hamburger helper guy. Do you know what that is? Do they have that around?
Well, we've got the Hamburglar, but that's McDonald's.
Okay, no. So there is a boxed dinner here, sold here in America, called Hamburger Helper, and they have like a claymation glove that has like eyes and talks to you, and like in the commercials helps you cook your dinner. Your $1 meal. He is scared by it when it comes to help him with his dinner in the short film, and brutally beats it to death with a rolling pin. Brutally beats it to death. And then there's another one, like there's another segment that I think it's a different short film, but in the same oeuvre of that same time period. And the Pillsbury Doughboy, which I'm sure you know what the Pillsbury Doughboy looks like.
Yeah,
I think that's transcended over.
Yeah, that's it. We've actually got that over here, yeah.
So he pops up and does, his Pillsbury Doughboy routine, and it also scares him. And so butcher knife comes out and he chops them into little pieces. And this nightmare that Sam Raimi crafted is one of my earliest horror memories. Thanks, Dad.
There we go. Thanks, Dad, and thanks, Pillsbury Doughboy. That's it. Well, thanks, Sam Raimi, for being fucking terrifying legend. But yeah, what a great memory. And, I love this section. I've had this section in my podcast since I first started it, because I love knowing what people's first time horror movie memories, because as I say all the time, we don't forget it, whether you love horror, whether it is something that stopped you in your tracks and you never watched horror ever again because it scared you so much. You never forget it. And that's what I love about horror. And that's the universal truth of how important or how integral horror is to us as people and as to cinema. But Anastasia,
I'm sorry. Just what I'm just thinking. Like, I couldn't tell you the first comedy I ever saw, but I can tell you the first horror movie I ever saw.
And that makes my segment fucking verified. And that's all. And that's it. And that's the reason I do it, because it's bloody. I absolutely love it. I love reading these that you send them over. So please send them over. Send as many as you can over, and then I'll add it to my list, because it's getting smaller and smaller, that list all the time. And I've got less and less to copy and paste. Anastasia, we've spoken everything we sort of can about Talk to Me. I hope everybody's enjoyed the episode about it. Now is for you to promote everything that you do on What in the Wide World of Cinema, Horror versus Reality, and Attack of the Killer Objects.
Oh, you said it the way I say. I'm in everything. Yes. So Attack of the Killer Objects is pretty self-explanatory. Every episode I cover a movie that involves a killer object, or at least an object that people think are killing. Sometimes I usually wiggle room, depending on what I want to talk about. Because it's my show and I can do whatever I want. I know. And then Horror versus Reality is co-hosted with me by my lovely friend Kendra. It used to be Morgan, but sometimes your co-host moves on to bigger and brighter things.
Sometimes life happens.
So anyway, Kendra and I, every episode, we talk about a horror movie that is based on a true crime. And then, so I talk about like the fun movie details and the production and the actors and, that stuff, the cinema of it. And then she breaks down the brutal true crime facts of what actually happened, what inspired this piece of cinema. And then my other movie podcast, which is not purely a horror movie podcast. It's the only podcast that I have where we talk about other things. But it's What in the Wide World of Cinema, and my co-host is Kate, and we talk about mostly weird movies, like movies that people probably haven't heard of or seen, and if they have, they're like, man, that movie was weird. Like, that's our bread and butter.
That's it. And obviously, so as I said, you are a long-time friend of the show, well, of mine now, and
yes.
And you, I believe that Horror versus Reality was the first ever guest spot I did when I was on somebody else's show.
I love that.
I think it was. I think because I was always so scared about going on other people's shows. I mean, like everybody, I've spoken about it before, but I never even envisioned having guests on my show because when I first started, obviously, Let's Talk Horror podcast, it was all solo episodes. It was just me through lockdown trying to get all this out. And then I started getting asked if people could be guests on my show. And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't think that will work. And guess what? It did. And it was way better than doing it on my own. And so then it started becoming that I would have guests. And then one day...
I think I told you early on that you were crazy to do it by yourself.
Yeah, I was.
Imagine doing it that way.
No, and it was absolutely insane, and obviously, for me, it was like my therapy and so on to get through it all, and then and I started having guests, but then people started asking me about doing guest spots as well, and I believe, and I'm pretty sure that the first ever guest spot I did was Horror versus Reality, where we did the what did we do? Was it the Jonestown?
Yes, we did Ty West.
And with the Sacrament.
Yes, that's what we did.
That's
Jonestown versus the Sacrament. And we taught you a bunch of stuff about infamous cults.
Yeah, that's it. And it was funny as well because I did that and I was fine talking about the movie, but obviously I'm not very clever. And when it came into the bit where, you were talking about the true stuff, I don't think I said anything for at least an hour or so because I was so into listening to everything that was going on. But that's the thing with your podcast is that they are truly great podcasts. They are so fun. You're always so fun to talk to. You're very like me when it comes to these that we don't, movies have to have some form of effect on us for us to want to be able to talk about them. There has to be more. There has to be more than just a movie for us to want to talk about. Like this movie. This movie, Talk to Me, is more than just a movie. And you do that on your podcast. We've spoken about Rubber. We've spoken about Benny Loves You. We've spoken about some weird movies and some fun movies. Puppet Master as well, that's it. And every time we do it, we always have fun. Hellraiser, obviously, like I said, if you want to hear us get drunk, there we go. But we always have so much fun. So if any...
I was
Yeah.
trying to think of what that movie is that we did the most recently for Horror versus Reality that no one's seen that you love so much.
Oh, The Lost. The
Yes,
Lost.
Deep Cut.
That's
Watch
right.
that one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a deep cut. If nobody knows what the movie The Lost is, and you're okay with watching something that's incredibly fucked up, and then watch that. That's a dark movie. That's one of the darkest movies I've ever seen.
It's very dark.
And it's a very dark, very heavy movie. It's a good movie. It's just dark and heavy.
It's weird. I think it's darker than the actual crime somehow.
Yeah, you're right. I think they made it. Yeah, they did. It's just, I mean, most of that is we're not going to go into it, but it's centered around obviously the central performance as well. A lot the performance in that movie of the lead in it. I always forget his name. I think his name's Mark Centaur, possibly. Or
I think you're right, Mark Centaur. I think you're correct.
His performance is phenomenal in it. So if you're somebody that likes movies that are very dark, The Lost is not easy to get hold of. I literally have the DVD, and that's all you can pretty much get. Go and watch that. That's sort of a recommendation in a way, but not for everyone. If you're all right with dark movies that are very, very sinister, then that's one. But yeah, we spoke about that.
We did. You know what? I'm going to say something I never thought I'd say before, but to paraphrase Taylor Swift, we declared that Mark Centaur should be a bigger artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he should be. And we did say that on that, and I stand by that. And the fact that I don't really know where he is now is a shame, because that is a movie that deserves a lot more credit for the way that he handles that anyway. And it's a dark movie. Yeah, be prepared. If you take this as a recommendation, be prepared. That's a dark one. But this movie that we've spoken about now, like obviously, well, going back to you promoting your stuff, please make sure everybody goes and supports Anastasia on what she does. She's great at it. It's almost so much fun, and obviously you can find them on all podcast platforms as well, Spotify, Apple, all that sort of stuff. You can find all the zillion shows that she does. But this movie, it's
I was just going to say real fast. All my socials are pretty much Instagram. I'm also on Threads. All of our handles are literally the actual titles of the show. So just
they've got no excuse.
Objects. Huh? Yeah,
they've got no bloody.
You've got no excuse not to find it. It's there, and you can find it on any place you listen to podcasts.
There we go. Exactly. So go and support everything that Anastasia does. I know that you'll enjoy it, because I bloody enjoy it. We've spoken on so many different films now, and it's nice to actually have you like in the Creep Zone on video for the first time. And obviously, going forward when we have our many more conversations in the future, this will be it.
I'll bring all my horror garb.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's my new T-shirt, everyone. Just a shitload of Chuckies. You've got the Cheddar Goblin. I mean, we're all horror kitted out. This is what we do for you.
My little Art the Clown earrings, everybody.
That's it. I haven't got mine in, unfortunately, not today. I'm not doing my karaoke sessions like I said earlier on. But anyway, look, just this movie is a great movie. Talk to Me is a fantastic movie. Like I mentioned, we wouldn't talk about it if there wasn't more to talk about within it. There is, and there's a lot to love about it. There's a lot to love about the people that created it and their journey through it. So if you love Talk to Me, I hope that you enjoy this episode. If you're watching this and you've never watched Talk to Me, you probably shouldn't have watched this episode, because that's your own fault, because you've mugged yourself right over, because you fucking know everything that happens now. But yeah, so Anastasia, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
That's fine. Let's Talk Horror. Obviously, the podcast. If you are somebody that does prefer to listen to them on audio, because obviously I'm doing this on video with Anastasia right now, but not when you're watching this or listening. We're not doing it right now and it's coming to you live. It doesn't work like that. But what I'm saying is that if you do like to listen to them on audio, you can listen to them on any podcast platform if it's easier for you to do. Either way, However you choose to watch it or listen to it, you're supporting my journey through horror. It means the world to me. Obviously, I always have to say a massive thank you to my Patreons so far, my honorary creeps. We've got the Flicks and Friends podcast, Dustin over there. We've got Jamie Burns, the Disco Doctor of Death. We've got Rob Miller, and we've got Leighton Collins. They're all my honorary creeps so far. If I get any more, like I've already mentioned, then I'm going to have to figure some way of scrolling bar or whatever. I don't fucking know. We'll figure it out. But it means the world to me that you're supporting my journey. And everybody out there, let's support each other on our journeys through horror. It means the world to me and Anastasia to sit here to talk about something and bring it to you. We love horror. And I know a lot of you out there do as well. So keep enjoying it. Keep making horror successes what it is. Like I said, Anastasia, thank you so much for coming on the show to talk about Talk
Thanks
to Me.
for having me. I enjoyed it. It was a great time. Shout out to my cat Jonesy, who kept making an appearance.
He's after some sort of alien somewhere.
He is. He's trying to catch him. He heard that one was out, and he had to practice.
Those grand xenomorphs. That's it. Awesome. Well, everybody, until next time, stay creepy, fuckers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Just wearing wonky glasses, or end up like Michael Douglas in Falling Down.
Oh my god, I love that movie.
What a fucking great movie. Kelly watches that and is genuinely convinced that's going to be me one day. Like, Kelly is so happy that I can't drive, because she literally said, when we watched that movie, she's like, that's like how that you haven't ended up like that. And I can see it. I can genuinely see it.
You're just one bad day away from falling down.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I need to watch that movie, because I mean, I watched it not long ago, but it's such a fucking like underrated gem, that movie.
Yeah, I think it's also like a whole genre. Like, man has one triggering incident and then goes on like rampage meltdown.
Yeah, but then at the same time, for some reason, you sort of feel for him, even though you really fucking shouldn't.
Yeah, he's weirdly sympathetic in some way.
I think it's all because a lot of us probably have quite dark, murderous tendencies inside of us that we sort of like feel a little bit for him, and then you're like, oh, I wish I could fucking do that. And then you snap back into reality and go, no, I probably shouldn't.
I mean, like, who hasn't in a grocery store, like, passive-aggressively been like, if you don't get out of the way of this display, I will kill you.
Yeah, like, if you don't get out of my way, I'm going to throw this lettuce at your fucking big head.
Yes, I felt that way the other day at the grocery store. I think it's normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Get away from my fucking Frosties, you bastard.
Yeah. You've been talking that forever.
Right, let's get into it. I don't know how we got into a conversation about cereal. Here we go.